Welcome back, everybody. Today I am doing an interview with the Dark Knight, Aragmar. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm well, thank you.
Well,
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. After our little session there trying to get everything to work and listen, hopefully this time the audio is a lot better for the audience.
I bet it will be.
And unfortunately for our audience, I don't have anything that I've made this time, so they're going to have to make do with beer like I'm doing. So, anyway, let's get started. I'm hoping that these new questions I've come up with aren't too invasive, but after reading 4 books, I've got a few more questions that might be a little bit closer to spoilers. So, our first question is client races play a big role in your universe. We all know the Terran clients, but are there other clients that we haven't met yet or you haven't had a chance to introduce? Which of these have you made do you think would be the scariest, and which do you think would be the most interesting?
You mean not Terran clans? Yes.
Yes, non-Terran clients.
Yeah, there are a few, more than a few, but unfortunately, only one of these is planned part of this book series.
Mm-hmm.
I may later include more in one of the trilogies, Serious Wars trilogies.
Mm-hmm.
But the one I'm thinking about it now. How should I put it? They are not visually scary. They look humanoid because this is partially what works best, excluding some terrible planets where the gravity is insane and the environment is crazy. But
Now I thought
um,
that Jovis,
yeah,
that he was a client, that the androids that
yeah,
Anitz's
yeah.
people use, their clients.
They are legally they are bound to their creators, the Zentari. Yeah,
Now, in the 4th book, you do make a point that the Terrans have appointed an emperor simply to go along with this larger galactic government. Did Anitz's people do the same?
they had an emperor, and it's part of the plot. But I can say that originally, during the old age of their people, when they had the Seeker Armada traveling around the galaxy and looking for precursor artifacts and ruins, etc., and making new contacts with alien races and going practically everywhere where no Zentari had ever foot.
Tentacle or
Um,
other appendage?
yeah, so back in those days, they had a ruling couple, an emperor and an empress, and it didn't matter who was actually in charge. They were practically interchangeable. But back then, their society was different. They actually didn't have the problems which they have now.
Mm-hmm.
And probably the main reason why the androids like Jovos exist was to facilitate everyday life and run the industry and the simple menial tasks and such, while most of the men explored the galaxy.
Ah.
So, and perhaps this is the main reason why they have this problem right now. One of the biggest problems of that civilization is that the androids are still doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they are being paid for this. They have jobs, but you can imagine that after so many thousands of years, how proficient these androids, and if someone would attempt to compete for their job,
Well, they would just be outclassed on
how
experience alone.
it would be impossible. And what actually would happen if these androids would decide, like, okay, so we are bored. We've been like doing this job for a couple thousands of years. I want to quit now. Yes, of course, they will find a replacement, but this replacement will never reach this level of proficiency and perfection.
Well, their androids are functionally immortal, so they have almost
Yes,
eternity
that
to.
too.
So Jovis, in your books, he is effectively retired, but he still continues to work for Anitsa.
Yeah.
So I have another little tertiary question here. I noticed that in the 4th book, there is a probably going to say it wrong, Jaren diplomacy effort, I say effort, to talk with the humans into possibly joining this larger governing body. And the Jaren are a matriarchy. They're run by females, and I remembered that
The Vaughn.
the Vaughn. So, I get them mixed up. I think a big lizard that eats things. But they have a matriarchy, and I noticed that the Tazarans also have a matriarchy. Is the Tazaran Empress kind of a diplomatic effort to keep up with the Vaughn? Or is that just how they naturally evolved?
Well, the Tazarans, they have, it's not actually a matriarchy. It's, I don't want to spoil it because it's one of the key parts of the next book. But all I can say that they have special kind of relationships which are based on the domination of one another. And it depends on character and also other like biochemistry. And this is how they evolve, that their people actually evolve like this. And it depends how they quote unquote court each other and who is in which position. And it just happened that the Empress won the courtship and is now ruling their imperium.
Okay.
And of course, her husband is completely devoted to her. And if he would have won, it would have been the other way around.
Okay, so it's based upon strength, not based upon gender.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically. They don't care about that.
Well, let's get into a different change of topic here. So, in your books, the children of the Terra Monarchy go through a number of apprenticeships before they're adults in order to become functioning adults in their society. If you were a child in your own universe, what apprenticeships would you like to take and which would you avoid?
That's a nice question. Most probably I will go for cooking, and I will probably pick someone on Mars because they have excellent cooks there, also street vendors, and I would pick something like that. And then I will buy, after my apprenticeship is completed, I will buy single-seater modified from a military short-range fighter, and I will move around the solar system. Probably I will not go anywhere else. I will visit different places, and I will work for a while selling street food and living on my fighter. And then I will change the planet or the colony or the asteroid colony or whatever it is. And what would I avoid? Maybe Psycorps, maybe, because they would know they will have to scan me if I attempt to join. I would have to pass a scan, like just a surface scan,
Right.
and they will immediately discover that I'm not from their universe, and then I will have problems, which I don't want.
You're going to have some questions to answer, sir.
Well, they are not going to jail me or something or do, but I will have someone watching my back for the rest of my life. Because I mean, I would be a security risk, and they will have to be sure, 100% sure that something doesn't hitch on me into their realm, some ping or something. They're very careful.
Very protective of their own reality. Oh, they got enough to deal with and stuff from our world leaking over.
Yep.
Well, here's an interesting question, and it's just something that occurred to me while I was reading the last book. It's so if there was a hypothetical battle royale scenario among the crew of the Shatterstar, who do you think would come out on top in a fight between all the characters and all the crewmates of the Starshatter?
Is this a battle to the death or just a spar?
Well, that's in a hypothetical scenario where they're sparring and one where it is an actual battle to the death.
Oh, that's hard. Well, if they are sparring, probably Probably Auric because he has the most experience
Mm-hmm.
them all, and is has like more than half a century of experience. If it's just a spar,
Mm-hmm.
well, then Brunner would win because he is the professional boxer there.
Right. But it doesn't hurt that he's like 15 feet tall.
Yeah, that too.
Now, I would have thought Boris would have come out on top in the one to the death just for his ridiculous ability to melt people from the inside.
Yes, but Alric would actually use his abilities to
To heal,
heal.
that's right.
Yes, and they would counter one another. Maybe if it's Boris after book, let's say 8,
Mm-hmm.
then Boris would win.
Okay. Well, I don't want to spoil the story as to what's
No,
going
no, no,
on
no,
that
no,
far
no.
out. No.
You will see what he gets because as you've already seen, all of the characters they have a gradual progression. They
Mm-hmm.
learn new stuff and get new equipment and create their old equipment.
Oh yeah,
So
Kat's
yeah,
the perfect example of that. I think Kat has probably had the most growth, even though I think she's had the least amount said about her. Where she has gone from being just a basic soldier to now she's an XO, and she's had to learn a lot about leadership. She's learned to master her own emotions and abilities.
oh yes, yes, that was one of the key parts of book 4. I just like you said in your review in your previous video that it has a similar structure to the first book.
Mm-hmm.
It not only tells a larger story, greater story, but also allows me to further their personal plot arcs, their personal story arcs, grow them even more, each of the characters, because this is old school space opera,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a 10-book series. There are certain books where I can, because the story is going certain ways,
Mm-hmm.
and of course this helps me to present to the reader another part of all of like the different characters, their additional story arcs and such. So it's all part of the plan.
All right. Well, let's get to the next question. If you had to live in the universe you created, aside from the Psychor constantly watching your movements if they scanned you, what do you think would be the hardest part about life?
It wouldn't be the fighting. It's probably the whole process of me adapting to their way of thinking
Mm-hmm.
because they've learned this since an early age, since early childhood. They
Mm-hmm.
know that they have to live every day as if it is their last day because you don't know what could happen tomorrow. That would be the hardest part for me.
They do seem fairly accommodating, like when they brought back all those people who had been slaves, and I mean, granted, Cat ran them through the ringer, training them up and giving them skills, but they do seem fairly accommodating to people who want to improve but have not had the chance in life.
Oh yes, because this is how you attain freedom.
True. And that's also how you make more powerful allies by
Oh
actually
yes,
making
oh yes.
powerful allies.
And they would need all their allies. Yeah, that's especially if you remember these slaves, which the captain and the rest, quote unquote, purchased in the second book, and then cats and the rest trained them, and they built a certain vehicle for them, so
Mm-hmm.
they could later return to their homeworld and liberate their own homeworld. I remember someone not liking this aspect. That was actually wasted money, wasted resources, or something. But I don't think that most of my readers would, like you just said, they actually thinking ahead, looking for the future, and not only helping others, but teaching those others how to help others and create more allies for themselves because they are not.
They're improving
And
the community rather than
yeah,
just improving their own wallets.
Yeah, because they could have just after they freed them, they could have just like dumped some money on them, told them to like, okay, so go home. But it's not wise. It's not very productive. They would get captured again. It's like or something else. Like or they would be killed.
Well, there would have been no point to freeing them at that point
Oh
if you
yeah,
were just
yeah.
to give them money and say, "All right, get at it." Anyway, so here's my last question for you, and we can just chat a little bit after that if you want to. If you had to pick a favorite alien race outside of those allied with the Terrans, who would it be?
The Lotorians.
Sorry, one more time.
The Lotorians.
The Lotorians.
You will read about them in book 5. The Lotorians, they are perhaps one of my favorite races, and for a variety of reasons, because just like the Terrans, they are an underdog, and they have suffered their fair share of
Mm-hmm.
various problems and slavery and such. But they have a lot of potential. Like you remember that famous Baldur's Gate intro about that untapped power. And it's not that they have some magical abilities or like the Averna, for example, or telepathy or and such. Like no, it's more the strength of their reforged spirit makes them so compelling. A lot of things happen in the next book, which we'll soon read, I think. But a lot of good comes out of this. It's not just, oh, yes, we will free you and then we'll just leave you to deal with your problems or something like that. Or, yeah, that's not how they do things.
Well, again, it would just be a waste of time to just free them and then turn them loose. Maybe give them
Yeah,
a little resource.
they would not know, especially if in the case of the Luthorians, they have no advanced tech. They are quite primitive. It's similar to early medieval tech level. And for example, if they deploy their troops and one of the soldiers is like, oh yeah, I'm aiming at this enemy and I'm going to shoot my laser rifle and he or she misses and that laser hits a house.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine what would happen to said house, which is mostly built from mud bricks?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not gonna fare well.
no.
To say it lightly.
Well, you know what ceramic does when you try to bake it and it's got an air pocket in it, it explodes.
Oh yeah.
So that would definitely not be good for that. There's actually a quote from a video game, and I can't remember which one it is, where this commander is yelling at his subordinates, telling them to wait for the computer to finish its lock on before firing the cannon. And the way he says, like, you're firing a 1-ton ferrous slug. What happens if it doesn't hit the ship? It's going to continue until it hits something.
Yes. I think that's from Mass Effect.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's been a few years since I've played Mass Effect, actually.
Yes.
I stopped playing when they decided that 3 was going to be on EA's Origin instead of
Yeah.
Steam. I'm not getting Origin if I can help.
They kind of botched the endings of the game. As you have most probably watched videos.
Oh, I heard the stink about it. Everybody was very upset about the ending of number 3. I like bittersweet endings. I can, well, except for Neon Genesis Evangelion. The ending of that that kind of ruined the series for me altogether. I was mad for a week about the ending of that one.
Yeah, it's I don't want to talk about the ending of the series because I know how it ends.
Mm-hmm.
I know because I've planned it. I have the drafts and,
Mm-hmm.
and such, and I'm not going to change it. But I'm not gonna spoil it either.
So as it stands now, how far do you have to go till you reach the end of your series?
They've always been 10 books.
So, you're still staying to 10 books?
Yeah, it was from the very beginning they were.
So you're going to have yourself a decology?
Yeah, and 2 serious war trilogies. One tells the story of a certain trader, which you have probably read the blog, and the other is about a young pilot who fights in space around Sirius across the system, and they basically complement each other, the 2 trilogies. Much shorter books, but still, it's one of
Your main books are pretty big anyway, so.
the first ones. Like the first three were not that big, but the later ones, starting from the fourth one, they got a bit bigger.
Well, you had a lot
When
more
you
to say.
Oh yes, yes. It's and the conflicts and everything gradually gets more complex. A lot of things to the imagination because this is the way.
Well, it's an infinitely expanding universe. The stories don't stop when the book stops or where the characters you're following stop.
Oh yeah. And when you get to the anthology,
Mm-hmm.
the story book, it has lots of new characters, different stories, ranging from covert ops agents working for Psycorps, militia soldiers defending their colony, also samurai from a certain clan, which you already got a glimpse of.
In the fourth
Uh,
book?
yep. Yep.
Okay.
And they are very sneaky.
Yeah, I noticed how they resolved a certain situation, and that was a great deal of treachery and trickery, but it was very creative in how they did it.
Well, the Terrans have to get really, really creative. They couldn't stand a chance in open warfare against, like, even one of the elder races. Well, probably they could fight these, maybe even reach a stalemate
Mm-hmm.
with these aliens, which you read about.
Mm-hmm.
And if the Von matriarchy joined them, then they might win eventually, but the damage would be horrifying. Would have to fight in the territory of that race, and the collateral damage to the infrastructure and everything else would be horrifying.
Well, the Terrans are very merciless when it comes to warfare. I mean, they openly use a lot of really powerful weapons that the other races seem reluctant to touch.
They have been using other weapons, and after so many tens and tens of thousands of years of the status quo never changing, they've like relied more on the bureaucracy of the Galactic Assembly, and they would simply wait it out, and they would have claims on certain systems or trade routes or something. They would pay bribes, lobby different politicians, etc., etc. But even in the quickest, most luckiest of cases, it might take a century because it's you can imagine this is like the galactic core. A certain system might have been property of 50 different races across the millennia. Each of them would be, oh no, this is my claim. And the other race was like, oh no, it's my claim. They would slap their tentacles or whatever appendages, like get out of my system. This is my planet, or this
Right.
is I can't build. I'm building this Dyson sphere around this sun, and this is my sun.
I imagine also with conflict that the Galactic Assembly, given how long it takes them to reach any decision, they're more than likely going to fall on the side of the winner, or in some cases, fall on the side of the sole survivors of the conflict.
Yeah, they would. In most cases, they wouldn't give a damn. They would just like, we don't care. But if it's something that concerns the status quo, for example, someone like the Terrans and their cultural influence spreading around and causing slave rebellions and such,
Mm-hmm.
well, they then would have to act immediately. And especially that other thing, which the Terrans also did, was the unsanctioned uplift of all of these species. I mean, the Terrans would very much like it to have that vaunted. It's not that they would love to join the Galactic Assembly, because the Galactic Assembly, everything by use of slave labor.
Right. And that's been the status quo, I think, for several millennia now, hasn't it?
More,
More than several millennia.
much longer. Because it's much cheaper to just throw countless millions of slaves at a problem than paying more money for machines to send machines to do the job. It's much cheaper to move your own artificially created slave race to maintain and build stuff, and they would just die in their billions.
Ew.
uh, building stuff, repairing stuff, maintaining stuff, and they would just like, okay, so you are a self-maintaining mechanism that fixes our machines. We don't need to spend money for that. We don't need to pay. You're growing your own food. You're building this for us. Like that's okay. We don't want you to waste other resources.
So basically, they can dump people of one race or another onto a planet and say, here's what we need from you. You're going to grow your own food. And as long as we get what we want, we won't basically torture and kill you.
Yeah, they would, in some cases, they would give them a very short amount of time to do that task. If it's something linked to a certain economical significance, they would basically work them to death. They view themselves as evolved, perfect, and superior.
And everybody else who's not like them is basically like livestock. And
It's even lower than livestock. You're just some replaceable tool.
I could see why the Terrans scare them, because using the machines and working towards maximum efficiency makes them very quick at doing things.
Yeah, it's if you look at the big picture, they could get away, like the galactic races of the Galactic Assembly, they could get away with not using super expensive and efficient machines to mine ore, for example, by having 15,000 asteroid mines or 20,000 or 50,000, let's say, with a couple of billion disposable miners
Right.
to dig the ore. And the Terrans would achieve great results with 3 or 4,000 asteroid mines with drones working, with machines.
They just have to maintain
That's the
machines.
difference. But they would have to pay for the maintenance and parts, etc., etc. I mean, they found ways to make cheap stuff, streamline things, but it's expensive.
So they're basically space China.
Yeah, maybe. But concerning like the unregulated client races of the Terrans, they could petition another race, like an elder race, to make them an accepted galactic civilization, proved. But the problem is that then they would have to engage in a different level of diplomacy with the Galactic Assembly, and they would say, oh, okay, so we approved you, and now you have to follow our regulations. You will have to stop doing like, why are you freeing those slaves? No, 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 this is against the law. And things would get more complicated and potentially deadlier.
Right.
Yeah.
The Galactic Assembly does well. After the 200 or 300 years they took to actually come to that conclusion, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. Depends. And probably the single thing which keeps the Galactic Assembly off the Terran's back is the Killera and the alliance of the little people. The small, tiny races on the Galactic Rim, which are like, we have 10 planets. We are considered somewhat of a civilization, but we're too weak. Like one pirate clan could wipe them out if they would. There are certain pirate clans that have hundreds of planets. They could survive only when they are allies of others. When they join forces, it's a normal, natural process,
I imagine that the elder races have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of planets, if not more, under their command.
Yeah. It's the Galactic Core, it has a shit ton of planets. And not only that, they have all tech. It would take them a few hundred years, but they can build planets.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, but they are stagnant because they have reached a level of technology which after that they have explored what they wanted to explore. They went where they wanted to go. They are basically mired in that bureaucratic tangle, that eternal swamp of, this is my clay, no, this is my clay, oh no, I want this rare resource, and the other civilization is like, no, screw you, we won't give it to you, we want this from you, and you did that, and blah blah blah. And this is their life now.
It sounds like the fate that Anitsa is trying to avoid for his people, where they've become just kind of complacent in what they've accomplished and they don't look to be going much further.
Yes, you will see more of that in a bit more in the sixth book and much more in the seventh book, okay, which is almost finished.
Now, I do like in this fourth book, without trying to spoil anything, in the first three books, while Anitsa is an interesting character, he's a little bit of an enigma. You don't really know why he's doing this. And in the fourth book, you finally get some reasons behind it and some real, I hate to say it like this, but some real human rationale for why he's doing what he's doing, even though he's still ridiculously smart and he's very puzzle oriented. You start to understand why he's doing a lot of what he's doing.
Yes, that's the best part of this archetype, the mysterious hero, which it's like an onion, and you get to show with each layer of the onion removed, you get to show different parts and sides of his character. And one of the best things is that the reader always has these theories about the mysterious hero. Or a heroine. They would constantly think, oh, why does he or she has these skills, or why exactly is this person doing this, what's the motivation? Because he's not someone who would outright say, oh, I'm doing this because exactly this happened in my past. And it's like, yes, you will eventually learn about it. You get hints. Yeah, this is basically the food for your little gray cells, these hints. So it can feed your imagination. You can think of different things. And the best part is when you actually, the author has like removed another layer, the onion, you see that what you assumed, what you thought is actually correct. Or you were very, very close, like that close. And you're like, oh man, that's so nice. It's something which I debated in the beginning if I should do it, but I'm glad that I did it.
So if you got to just a question off the cuff, if you got to go to any planet that you've made in your story so far for a vacation, which would it be?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Okay, so outside of the solar system or inside the solar system?
Just any planet in your series. Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm split between Apple Crates and Mars.
You want to go to Apple Crate for their cider, don't you?
Oh, and the fishies.
And the fishies. Yes, the fishies. You could make some really good apple crusted fish.
Oh yes. And not only that, this is one of the fastest growing colonies, which started with a few dozen colonists. And if you read the extra stories, which I wrote as blogs, I also, of course, wrote it in the books. Because when you actually get certain product, you're expected to learn certain things and not have to go to another place and read something that explains what actually happens. That you know what I'm trying to say, that about something about Star Wars and stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, it's actually in the books. So basically, they thought they were going to die because they were left stranded there. And this is how they named their colony, because they were left with one big crate with apples, and they rationed them because it was a storage crate with like a refrigeration crate. It's not actually a refrigeration, but let's say it's a common tech that they use, a stasis.
Right, it's locked in time rather than kept cold.
Yeah. So not perfectly locked, but yeah. Even though they rationed them and they sent people to call for aid, the shuttle that they were left with had limited fuel reserves, and it was just a cargo hauler shuttle. It was in system craft. It was not equipped with a FTL drive of any kind. They basically did everything possible. They looked for other types of food. They even dug roots
Mm-hmm.
and such. They planted the seeds of the apples, but it takes time to grow a tree of apples.
Oh yeah.
It's not like no. And after they built cryopods with what precious little supplies they had, they built a couple of cryopods,
Mm-hmm.
but those were not enough for all of them, and so they placed the kids there. And in the last cryopod they did a lottery. They drew numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and the person who drew the number for the last pot, she considering it just like, no, I'm just gonna give my number to somebody else. And she went to the river, to the big river where they landed.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly she found a fish.
Oh.
She saw a fish and she was like, what? It's like they weren't there. It's like we didn't see anything else. Well, okay, so we saw some tiny insects like mosquitoes and such,
Mm-hmm.
flies, but you can't eat them.
No,
I mean, you can try, but
you're not gonna get much out of it.
it's yeah, you're not gonna get much out of it. But the fish, oh boy! And she caught one fish,
Mm-hmm.
or better yet, we should say that the fish voluntarily got itself caught.
Well, it probably hadn't had to deal with anything trying to eat it before.
Probably. I mean, I'm not gonna lift the mystery, but this colony is very interesting. It has a certain building. Well, it's more like a monolithical thing. It's at first when they finally explored everything, they said, okay, so what the heck is this? They attempted to study it, but they didn't learn much except that it was very, very old. It didn't do anything to them when they tried to poke it with stuff like after everything else was explored. They wouldn't just like, oh, let's nuke this. No, no.
Right.
They would first study it for years and years and years. And
I love the insinuation that the very first test is poke it with a stick, see what happens.
see what happened, or like how the quote unquote first Egyptologists like,
Yep.
oh, let's blow the cover stones of this tomb with dynamite.
Well, that's the second step. First step in all science is poke it with a stick. Second step is blow it up.
The poke it with a stick method is oftentimes much less damaging
Yes.
than the blowing it up. So yeah, I would love to go there, and you could basically camp in the forests.
Mm-hmm.
The weather is beautiful. There are no predators there.
Mm-hmm. Because all there really is the fish and the bugs.
Yes, and they've populated the forests with foxes
Mm-hmm.
and other wild game like deer,
Mm-hmm.
wild boars, etc., and the smaller mammals and marsupials and such.
Oh, boars was that was a bold
Yeah.
choice because wild pigs they're fairly dangerous.
They've noticed something that the animals that they've left in the forest, they kind of act
Docile?
how should I? Not 100% docile. If you try to poke it with the stick, a fox with the stick, the fox will bite you.
What do foxes have against science?
But they wouldn't outright attack you. It's like they would just avoid you, and if you're just camping there, you won't. Well, if you go hunting, the boar or the deer or the foxes, they will try to run away from you, but unless you're doing something worse, like trying to do experiments with them, like certain quote-unquote doctors did to certain types of very adorable puppies.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
No. They will bite your face. That's and Apple Crate has nice, excellent food. They have a trade street now. Like it's not a huge colony. I think it's a little bit above 1,000 people.
Wow, that's
Plus-
not big at all.
Plus a few hundred mercs, because there is a base of mercenary company, a private military, and you can go anywhere on the planet. You can climb the mountains. You can have like a small boat and follow that huge river. It's full of fishes and they're very delicious. or you could just stay somewhere around the settlement and eat those delicious apples, drink the cider. That's yeah.
Well, apple crate
Make,
sounds like a homesteader's dream. Just
oh
grab
yes,
yourself some
yes.
seeds and head on out and start your own little farm.
Yep. You just how should I put it? The people who explored it initially, they never saw any fish in the water or even insects.
I just imagine a world without mosquitoes. That'd be a wonderful world.
Uh, yes, but the humans are just not. It's like yeah, it's not trying to kill us, and when we don't want to poke with it, to poke it with nukes or stuff because we're not stupid. We have like we're living a nice life here. Just have a nice day, and the next day and the next day, just don't poke it.
Well, I think that's all the time I've got for today for you. So, do you have anything else you'd like to say to the listeners before we finish up?
Well, like I mentioned before, newest installment, seventh book in the Starshatter series will be hopefully soon completed and published. And those who haven't yet had the chance to read, they could even start with the anthology, with the storybook, because it's a more welcoming format for readers who are not sure if they want to start a long series yet. And it has some awesome, very interesting stories, and also beautiful cover made by Neutronboar.
I'm working with him recently for another project myself.
Yes, excellent. Is a good friend of mine, and he's been very helpful, and not only to me but to many other indie authors which I connected with him, introduced him to them, and he's quickly amassing a nice portfolio of book covers as you've already seen. So
If to any of our listeners who haven't checked out his site, I'll leave a link in the description. He's got a lot of different book covers and a lot of different styles. He does really good work.
and he's also making personalized avatars.
Oh,
That's another thing which I have to mention.
if you're going to try to do anything professionally on social media, you do kind of need your own avatar. You can't use the little anime avatar forever.
Oh yes, yes. I kind of like your viciously grinning avatar, which reminds me with the beard and everything. If you would like put a pair of glasses and color the beard red, you could pass for a very well looking but bold Mac.
Well, actually, I got that avatar is done by Kukuruyo. He does a lot of more anime styled stuff. I used him for the cover of my first book because all my beta readers said it read a lot like it felt like it should be a graphic novel or a comic book, and so I thought that would go really well with the theme. But
That's a very nice cover.
oh yeah, well I gave him a picture of me, and I asked him to draw me for my avatar because I wanted it to be me, but I don't want people 100% to know what I look like. You know, I like a little bit of anonymity, even though I'm still out there in the public eye somewhat.
Yes, and as a last thing, you know that I like to ask who is your favorite character, and if you had a change of heart and you now have another character.
Well, I do still like Mr. Spookums as my favorite character, but we haven't heard as much from him as I would have liked.
Don't worry.
I also still, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Omasa, that was it.
Oh yeah.
But I love bad guys. Like a good bad guy is always my favorite character. But outside of that, if I picked one from the Starshatter crew, probably Kat right now, because she seems to have shown the most growth. And there's a lot with Kat that I can relate to, because when I was growing up, I had a very vicious temper, and even as an adult I have had to learn how to deal with that, and I had to be more cerebral about my reactions to things and just slow down and control myself better. So Cat really resonates with me in that aspect.
Yes, it's part of that character archetype. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it really is one of the best things about these old school style space operas, because they have a lot of varied character archetypes and villain archetypes already seen. And when you read the next book, you will read about a lot more of the baddies,
Mm-hmm.
including Nettle, who is now the Lord General of the Coalition, the second in command under Lord Omasa himself,
Mm.
and everybody else, everyone, including the Yarn Mech Warrior
Mm-hmm.
and Tale and everyone. You will see. And because the books are planned, every book has different character arcs, and different characters or different villains would grow more.
That actually did lead me to a question, because I remember early in your series you talked about demons, and I believe we mentioned them in the last interview. And in this last book, we had a number of ghosts and apparitions. How closely related are those two in your universe?
Well, they are, without spoiling everything, I would say that they are very closely related, in some cases even interlinked, but it depends on the entity. And some apparitions are, of course, malevolent, some are not, some are just stuck because of what they themselves did or
Mm-hmm.
somebody else did. There are others who were just locked in some laboratory,
Ooh.
being experimented on, because yes, you have, since you already have the tech to detect them, logic dictates that there would be scientists, quote unquote scientists,
Mm-hmm.
would say, let me find a ghost poking stick and poke that ghost with that stick and
I,
see what happens.
I can't poke it with a normal stick, but let's see if there's a
Oh,
stick I can poke it with.
and if they couldn't research that stick, they would
Mm-hmm.
find somebody else who would.
So I couldn't figure it out, but I'm sure I could sell it to somebody who can.
Especially for people like the Tezarans, who would, some of the most vicious of them, they would even sell their own family members
Ooh.
and themselves, including themselves,
I
which
bet
is
they would benefit from an ability to capture ghosts and
oh
put them
yes,
into stuff.
and you will see in book 6 certain something gets caught and by one of the main baddies. I won't spoil it, but it was one of the moments which most of my longtime readers absolutely loved, because it's in that book I show more of the, probably the most of the Tazarans that you've already seen, which is not little. It's They are quite well developed as a villain, just like the Yarn and the pirate clans. They are not just cardboard cutouts. Yeah, even though in the first book, uh, I deliberately used certain types of villains because they would fit perfectly in these different cases.
It
So yeah.
amazes me that the Galactic Assembly allows the pirate clans to continue existing. It feels like that would be something they'd want to deal with.
Why? They provide them with slaves.
Oh, so they basically found a way to integrate themselves or ingratiate themselves.
Yep.
So
That's
does that mean that the pirate clans have their own systems and planets and stuff that they rule over?
Oh yes, yes. Some of them, like I said earlier, they some of the most powerful ones, they have hundreds of planets.
So it's kind of like in medieval times when bandit groups they would end up becoming like the nobility because they couldn't get rid of them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, I wonder what life on a pirate planet is like.
Well, I might write something about this because, as you know, I have posted my short scenes
Mm-hmm.
series of blogs on Minds, plus collaboration with another good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I will probably butcher her name, Todolomejor. Major.
I
I'm
know who
sorry.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
I would have trouble with that name myself.
I'm bad with pronouncing names.
Well, send me their
even the names of my own character.
send me their link in the chat, and I'll put it in this video so people can go read some of these stories by the two of you. Well, I think that's about all the time I've got for today, because I got some editing to do myself. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
I think I should go back to work. So thank you for having me.
Oh, not a problem. We'll try to do this again when I get probably another 2 books in, and I can get some more questions for you.
Oh, I think the next book will provide you with plenty.
Well, I'm going to try to get a few other authors' books before I do the next book, just so I can get a few more people built up on mines. I've kind of fallen to a hole where I'm reviewing the same 3 and 4 people over and over again. I want to touch a few more authors before I go too far into any one series. But now, with my new job, I've got time.
Have you seen that Reverend Holiday has published a new book?
I did not.
I will send you the link. He's a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
His book is has zombies in it.
I've always been hesitant. Ever since I was a little kid, I've been plagued by zombie nightmares, even though I never watched the movies. I know the general premise of how zombie movies are supposed to go. And I talked with a preacher about it years ago, and I've talked with family members, and the basic conclusion that we came to was that I was at these jobs where I was doing a lot of the work, and basically a lot of people who were into more illicit substances were standing around and even being a detriment to the job. And they told me that it was because I felt like I was doing everything and building everything up, and all these people were just basically sabotaging and tearing everything down. So it was just a weird scenario.
I will send you the link.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about the diatribe.
You will make your own choice.
I did pick up a bunch of other people's books that were free over Christmas.
Yes, I remember distinctly sharing a lot of their posts.
Yeah, I remember spending a lot of tokens. That's what I remember.
Ooh, that's a great way to get new books.
Oh yeah, it's I do like having Christmas sales. If anybody out there who's listening is an author and next year you have Christmas specials, let me know. I want to set up a thing where I can just, promote everybody who's giving away books at Christmas time, because I think we really need to work on building up this alternative authors network we kind of got going on here to compete with the people who are out there who make the really preachy and boring stuff.
Yes. If I can help you in any way,
oh, I'll be in touch.
Let me know.
I will. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and call it there, because I also got stuff to do, and I know that you, as the busiest author that I know, you've got lots of stuff to do. So thanks for coming on.
Again, thank you for having me.